Lana Clarkson, an American actress, became an unfortunate figure in one of Hollywood's most notorious criminal cases. Her life, once filled with potential and aspirations, was tragically cut short in the early hours of February 3, 2003. Clarkson had been working at the House of Blues in Los Angeles, where she met the infamous record producer Phil Spector. Little did she know that this seemingly innocent encounter would lead her to a violent and untimely death at the age of 40. Spector's mansion, Pyrenees Castle in Alhambra, California, became the chilling setting of her murder, and the case would go on to captivate the media and the public for years to come. Before her death, Lana Clarkson had a career in the entertainment industry, though it was often overshadowed by fleeting roles and public struggles. She had appeared in various films, including the cult classic Barbarian Queen, where she played the title role. Her striking beauty and presence on screen made her a memorable figure in 1980s and 1990s B-movie cinema. However, despite her acting talent and recognition in niche circles, Clarkson had not reached the level of fame she may have hoped for in Hollywood. She spent much of her adult life working in various jobs, including a stint as a hostess at the House of Blues, where she met Phil Spector on that fateful night. Spector, a legendary music producer, was at the time a controversial figure, known not only for his musical genius, but also for his erratic behavior and troubled personal life. His reputation had been marred by allegations of violence and bizarre incidents, but he had maintained a successful career. In the years leading up to the murder, Spector had withdrawn from the public eye, living in seclusion in his mansion, which was more of a fortress than a home. It was in this isolated environment that Clarkson's life came to an end, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and suspicions about what happened during those final moments. The night of the murder began innocuously enough, with Clarkson meeting Spector at the House of Blues. She had been working there that evening when Spector approached her, and the two struck up a conversation. By all accounts, their interaction seemed casual, but it soon took a dark turn. Spector invited Clarkson to his mansion in Alhambra, where they continued to spend time together. However, the events that followed remain unclear, as only Spector and Clarkson were present in the mansion when the fatal shot was fired. Around 5 a.m., a call was placed from Spector's home to the police, with Spector claiming that Clarkson had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. However, the circumstances surrounding her death seemed suspicious from the start. Investigators found Clarkson's body at the bottom of the mansion's staircase, with a gunshot wound to her mouth. The scene appeared staged, and the authorities quickly began to focus their attention on Spector as the prime suspect. The case against Spector would be long and contentious, with legal proceedings lasting several years. In 2007, Spector stood trial for the second-degree murder of Lana Clarkson. The trial was heavily covered by the media, with details of the crime and Spector's bizarre behavior in the courtroom making headlines. A key aspect of the trial was the question of whether the shooting was accidental or intentional. Spector's defense team argued that Clarkson had committed suicide, but the prosecution maintained that Spector had intentionally killed her. Despite the significant evidence against him, the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict, and a mistrial was declared in September 2007. The mistrial was a blow to those seeking justice for Clarkson, but the case was far from over. In 2008, Spector was retried for the same crime. This time, the prosecution had a stronger case, presenting evidence of Spector's history of violence and his unstable mental state. The trial was a tense and dramatic affair, with numerous witnesses testifying about Spector's erratic behavior, including his previous threats and violent tendencies. The jury deliberated for weeks, and on April 13, 2009, they found Spector guilty of second-degree murder. The conviction of Phil Spector brought a sense of closure to the tragic story of Lana Clarkson, though it could never undo the pain of her untimely death. On May 29, 2009, Spector was sentenced to 19 years to life in prison for the murder of Clarkson. The verdict was a significant moment for the family and friends of the victim, who had long sought justice for her. For Spector, the sentence marked the end of his once glorious career, as his fall from grace was complete. He had gone from being one of the most influential figures in the music industry to a convicted murderer, and his story was a stark reminder of the darkness that can lie behind the glittering world of fame. Spector's time in prison was marked by health problems, and he eventually died in a prison hospital in January 2021. His death did not bring relief to those who had been affected by his actions, but it did serve as a final chapter in one of Hollywood's most haunting stories. For Lana Clarkson, her legacy endures, though it is a bittersweet one. She is remembered not only for her career in entertainment, but also for the tragic circumstances surrounding her death, which continue to resonate as a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame and the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors. The murder of Lana Clarkson left an indelible mark on the world, a reminder of how fragile life can be and how the actions of one individual can forever change the lives of others. It is a story that continues to captivate those who hear it, and one that serves as a somber reflection on the perils of fame, power, and the human capacity for violence. Lana Clarkson's tragic death on February 3, 2003, remains one of the most infamous and perplexing events in Hollywood history. On that day, her life was violently cut short, leaving behind a complex web of questions, suspicions, and an emotional aftermath that would forever alter the lives of those who knew her. Her death, which occurred in the mansion of music producer Phil Spector, would go on to become a high-profile criminal case that captivated the media and the public alike, raising questions about the nature of fame, violence, and the dark side of celebrity. The night began innocuously enough. Lana Clarkson, a talented but relatively unknown actress, was working at the House of Blues in Los Angeles on February 3, 2003. She had been employed there for some time, serving as a hostess, but her career had not progressed as she had hoped. Despite some early success in the entertainment industry, including a starring role in the cult classic Barbarian Queen, Clarkson had found herself working in menial jobs, struggling to find steady acting opportunities. Her star had faded in the competitive world of Hollywood, and she had settled into a routine that involved working at the House of Blues, a popular venue in Los Angeles. It was there that she encountered Phil Spector, the legendary but controversial music producer who was known for his influential work in shaping the sound of the 1960s. Spector, who had produced some of the most iconic songs in pop music history, had long been a troubled and eccentric figure. His career had been marked by periods of genius and periods of erratic behavior, and by 2003, he had become a reclusive figure, living in his sprawling mansion in Alhambra, California. He had withdrawn from the public eye, but his reputation for violent outbursts and strange behavior was well known in the industry. According to reports, Clarkson and Spector met briefly at the House of Blues that night, and the two struck up a conversation. Spector, who was known to be charismatic but also unpredictable, reportedly invited Clarkson to his mansion. It was a generous offer, and Clarkson, who had recently been struggling with her own career and personal life, accepted. She had little reason to suspect that this seemingly innocent interaction would turn into a life-altering and violent encounter. Clarkson and Spector left the House of Blues together, and they made their way to Spector's mansion, known as the Pyrenees Castle, in Alhambra, a city in the greater Los Angeles area. As Clarkson arrived at the mansion with Spector, she likely had no idea what was about to transpire. She had been invited into a world that was far removed from the everyday reality she had known. Spector, who had a long history of erratic and violent behavior, was not the glamorous, larger-than-life figure that many had known in the 1960s. By this time, he had become infamous for his mood swings, violent tendencies, and bizarre antics. Still, for Clarkson, the invitation to Spector's home likely seemed like an opportunity to socialize with a famous figure, perhaps even reviving her own career through this connection. The exact details of what occurred inside the mansion that night remain unclear. No one knows for certain what transpired between Clarkson and Spector in the hours leading up to her death. However, what is known is that at some point during their time together, a gunshot was fired. Clarkson was found dead in Spector's mansion, and the police were immediately called to the scene. According to Spector's account, he claimed that Clarkson had died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. He described the events as a suicide, stating that Clarkson had taken her own life after a brief conversation. However, the evidence at the scene painted a different picture. Investigators found Clarkson's body at the bottom of a staircase inside the mansion, and there was no indication that she had been alone in the moments leading up to her death. The crime scene appeared staged, with the presence of a .38 caliber Colt Cobra revolver lying next to Clarkson's body. This raised serious doubts about Spector's version of events. The police quickly began to question Spector about the events that led to Clarkson's death. He was taken into custody for questioning, and the investigation began to unravel the details of the night. The evidence suggested that Clarkson's death was not a suicide, but rather a case of homicide. There were no signs of a struggle, but the positioning of Clarkson's body and the presence of the gun indicated that she had not taken her own life. The fact that Spector was the only other person present at the scene made him the prime suspect in the case. As the investigation continued, new details about Spector's behavior began to emerge. Witnesses and those who had known him in the past spoke about his erratic and violent tendencies. He had a long history of making threats and engaging in strange behavior, often involving firearms. In fact, Spector had previously been involved in a number of incidents that involved guns, including an incident in which he reportedly pulled a gun on a houseguest. Spector's arrest and the subsequent investigation brought even more attention to the case. The media quickly seized on the story, with headlines proclaiming the shocking death of the actress and the arrest of the famous producer. The case became a sensation, with the public eager to learn more about the circumstances surrounding Clarkson's death. The media coverage was intense, and the trial that would follow would be equally captivating. In 2007, Spector stood trial for the murder of Lana Clarkson. The prosecution argued that Spector had intentionally killed her, citing his violent history and the suspicious circumstances surrounding her death. The defense, on the other hand, contended that Clarkson had died as a result of a suicide and that there was no evidence to suggest otherwise. Despite the mistrial, the case was not over. In 2008, Spector was retried for the murder of Lana Clarkson. This time, the prosecution had a stronger case, and the trial was closely watched by the media. The jury ultimately found Spector guilty of second-degree murder in 2009, and he was sentenced to 19 years to life in prison. The verdict was a bittersweet victory for those who had hoped for justice for Lana Clarkson, but it could not bring her back. Phil Spector's life after the trial was marked by a series of health issues. He was diagnosed with various medical conditions and spent his final years in prison. He died in January 2021, but his passing did little to alleviate the pain and loss felt by those who had been affected by his actions. For Lana Clarkson, her story remains one of tragedy, a reminder of how fragile life can be and how quickly it can be snuffed out by violence. Lana Clarkson's tragic death remains a somber reminder of how fame, personal struggles, and the darker aspects of human nature can intersect with devastating consequences. Her life, although short-lived, left behind an indelible mark not only on those who knew her personally, but also on the broader public. Lana Clarkson came from a background where she once had the potential for stardom. She was a beautiful, talented actress with dreams of a career that would elevate her to the ranks of iconic stars. Early in her career, she had appeared in a number of films, including the cult classic Barbarian Queen, which gave her a moment in the spotlight. But for all her beauty and talent, the harsh realities of the entertainment industry began to overshadow her career. Despite these challenges, Lana never lost her resolve. She worked hard to maintain a steady income, even if it meant accepting jobs far from the glitzy premieres and red carpets she had once dreamed of. For those who knew Lana Clarkson, there is no replacing the loss they experienced. Her death left a void not only in her family's lives, but also in the world of entertainment. There are countless actresses, artists, and aspiring performers who, like Clarkson, struggle against the odds of an industry that often values image over substance, fame over authenticity. In the years since her death, Lana Clarkson's story has remained relevant to discussions about violence, fame, and the fragile nature of life. It has prompted many to ask deeper questions about the risks faced by women in vulnerable situations, particularly in the entertainment industry. It has also forced a conversation about the nature of violence and the ways in which people with power and influence are often allowed to operate without consequence until it is too late. In the end, while justice was served through Spector's conviction, it will never fully bring closure to those who loved Lana Clarkson. Her death is a tragic reminder that violence is not always easy to spot, and the scars left by such events are often invisible. Lana Clarkson's life may have been short, but her story lives on in the lessons it teaches us about the dangers of unchecked power, the fragility of life, and the need to always strive for justice, even when the truth seems elusive.